The red dust of Mars swirled around Captain James Walker's boots as he made his way across the planet's surface. His team had been exploring this region for 3 weeks, following strange energy readings that didn't match any known human installations. Through his helmet's visor, he watched the sun setting behind the rusty hills, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. "Captain, you need to see this," came Tom's voice through the radio. Tom was the team's sensor specialist, and something in his voice made Walker quicken his pace. Walking over a small ridge, Walker stopped dead in his tracks. Before him stood what looked like a door, a perfectly smooth metallic door built into the Martian rock face. It wasn't human-made. The design was too different, too advanced. How did we miss this all these years? Walker wondered aloud, approaching the structure. The answer came quickly enough. It had been hidden. As they got closer, they could see the remains of sophisticated camouflage technology that had finally failed after what must have been centuries of operation. "Sir, these readings are off the charts," said Linda, their science officer, waving her detection equipment around. "There's an active power source behind this door. It's been running this whole time." Walker took a deep breath. This was what Earth had been waiting for, proof that they weren't alone, that other civilizations existed. But something felt wrong. Why hide an installation on Mars? Why not just contact Earth openly? It took them 3 hours to figure out how to open the door. In the end, it was surprisingly simple. The door responded to basic radio frequencies, almost as if it had been designed to eventually be found by a civilization that had reached a certain level of technological development. Inside, they found a treasure trove of alien technology. The facility was small but packed with data terminals and strange machines. Most interesting was that everything seemed sized for human use, which made no sense at all. "Captain," called Linda from one of the terminals she'd managed to interface with. "You really need to see this. The data, it's about Earth." Walker moved to her station, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The screen showed centuries of surveillance data about Earth. Reports, analyses, and most disturbing of all, intervention plans. This wasn't just an observation post. It was a control center. "Look at this," Linda pointed to one report. "They've been actively suppressing our technological development. Every time humanity was about to make a major breakthrough in certain fields, particularly in space travel and energy generation, there would be mysterious accidents, key scientists would disappear, or funding would suddenly get cut." "But why?" Tom asked, looking over their shoulders. The answer came as they dug deeper into the files. The facility belonged to something called the Galactic Council, a federation of advanced species that governed most of the known galaxy, and humanity, it seemed, terrified them. "It's our adaptability," Linda explained, reading through the reports. "Most species take thousands of years to advance through technological stages. We do it in decades. They're afraid of how quickly we learn and grow." Walker downloaded as much data as they could carry. This wasn't just a discovery, it was a warning. The fact that they could now access this facility meant something had changed. Either the Council had decided to stop hiding, or something had gone wrong with their equipment. As if to answer his thoughts, a new alert flashed across the screens. Walker didn't need to understand the alien language to recognize a countdown when he saw one. "Everyone out. Now," he shouted, rushing his team toward the exit. They barely made it 100 meters before the ground shook. Turning back, they watched the facility sink into the Martian soil, burying itself deep underground. But it was too late for the Council. Humanity had the data now. They knew the truth. As Walker looked up at the Earth, shining like a blue jewel in the Martian sky, he realized that everything was about to change. Humanity had been held back, controlled, and manipulated for centuries. But no longer. The time for human defiance had begun. He keyed his radio to contact Earth Command. "Base, this is Captain Walker. You're not going to believe what we just found." Dr. Anna Thompson hadn't slept in 3 days. The data from the Mars facility filled her laboratory screens, each one showing different pieces of an enormous puzzle. Coffee cups littered her desk, and her eyes were red from staring at the alien symbols for hours on end. But she had done it. She had cracked their language. "Get me Captain Walker," she said to her assistant. "He needs to see this now." Within an hour, Walker arrived at her underground laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains. His face showed the same exhaustion as hers. The past week had been intense for everyone involved in the Mars discovery. "What did you find?" he asked, not bothering with greetings. Anna pointed to her main screen. "They're coming. The Galactic Council. They're already on their way to Earth." The facility's self-destruct wasn't an accident. It was a signal. Before Walker could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. A voice came over the speakers. "Unknown objects detected entering the solar system. All personnel to emergency stations." "How long?" Walker asked, his voice tense. 3 days at most," Anna replied, pulling up more data. "But that's not the worst part. Look at this." She showed him translated documents about the Council's integration protocols. On the surface, they looked benign. Promises of technological advancement, medical breakthroughs, and membership in a galactic community. But buried in the complex legal language were the real terms. "They'll strip us of all military power," Anna explained. "Place advisors in every major government. Control our education, our technology development, even our population growth. It's not an invitation. It's a complete takeover." Walker's radio crackled. "Captain, you're needed in the command center. The president is about to make an announcement." They rushed to the main command room, where dozens of screens showed the same image, the president standing at his podium. But before he could speak, the broadcast was interrupted. A figure appeared on every screen worldwide. It looked almost human, but its skin was too perfect, its movements too precise. This was High Commander Reed of the Galactic Council. "People of Earth," the figure spoke in perfect English, "we come with an invitation. For centuries, we have watched your progress, guided your development, and protected you from the dangers of premature advancement. Now, you are ready to join our galactic community." Anna and Walker exchanged looks. They knew the truth behind those pleasant words. "We will arrive in 3 of your Earth days," Reed continued. "We bring gifts of knowledge and technology. Prepare for a new era of peace and prosperity under the Council's guidance." The transmission ended, leaving an eerie silence in the command center. Then every phone, radio, and computer began receiving the same message: the Council's integration protocols, dressed up as a peace treaty. "They're clever," Anna said, watching governments worldwide begin to discuss the proposal. "They're playing on our hopes. Many will want to sign." Walker nodded grimly. "How long until you can decode the rest of the Mars data?" "There might be something we can use. A few days, maybe less if I..." Anna stopped mid-sentence, staring at a new pattern emerging on her tablet. "This can't be right." "What is it?" "According to this, we're not the first civilization they've done this to. There are others, dozens of them, all integrated into the Council, all carefully controlled and suppressed." She looked up at Walker, her eyes wide. "But that's not all. These equations, these energy patterns, they're familiar, too familiar." "What do you mean?" "Some of our most basic scientific discoveries. Things we thought we figured out on our own. They're not just similar to Council technology. They're exactly the same, down to the decimal point." She swallowed hard. "We didn't discover them naturally. They were planted. The Council has been feeding us the exact science they wanted us to have, keeping us on a leash while making us think we were free." Walker's fists clenched. "How many people know this?" "Just us for now." "Keep it that way," he ordered, heading for the door. "I need to make some calls. If they've been controlling our science, maybe it's time we tried something they haven't planned for." The fate of Earth would depend on what they did in the next 3 days. Admiral Mark Stevens stood in a vast underground chamber that shouldn't exist. 2 miles beneath the Nevada desert, He watched as hundreds of Earth's brightest minds worked at a frantic pace. The facility had been built in secret years ago, meant for a day the world hoped would never come. That day had arrived. "Status report," he called out to the room. Dr. Thompson looked up from her workstation. She hadn't slept in days, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "We've made progress. The Council thinks they know everything about our technology, but they've made a huge mistake." She led Stevens and Captain Walker to a sealed chamber. Inside, a strange device hummed quietly. It looked rough, almost primitive, with exposed wires and makeshift parts. "They've been feeding us their technology piece by piece," Anna explained. "But they never expected us to put those pieces together in ways they hadn't thought of, ways they considered impossible or illogical." Walker studied the device. "What does it do?" "It breaks their rules," she said with a smile. "Every piece of Council technology follows strict development protocols. Step A must come before Step B, which must come before Step C. But we humans, we jumped straight from A to Z, then worked backward to figure out the middle." Stevens nodded approvingly. All around the room, similar projects were underway. Teams of scientists and engineers worked on weapons, shields, and communication systems that defied the Council's rigid technological hierarchy. "How many other facilities like this do we have?" Walker asked. 12, Stevens replied, "spread across every continent, each working on different aspects of our defense. The Chinese have nearly cracked their shield technology. The Brazilian team has found a way to detect their cloaked ships. India's engineers have developed a weapon that shouldn't be possible according to Council physics." A young technician rushed up to them, tablet in hand. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the Council ships. They're starting diplomatic talks with world governments." On the main screen, they watched as High Commander Reed spoke with the United Nations. His words were smooth, reasonable, promising a golden age for humanity. Many of the delegates seemed swayed by his promises. "Let them talk," Stevens said quietly. "It gives us more time." In another part of the facility, military strategists studied Council battle tactics obtained from the Mars data. They found patterns, rigid, unchanging patterns that hadn't evolved in centuries. The Council's military might was overwhelming, but it was predictable. "They fight like machines," one analyst noted. "No creativity, no adaptation. They've been the strongest for so long, they've forgotten how to improvise." Hours turned into days. While the world's governments negotiated with the Council, the underground facilities worked without rest. They had one advantage: the Council's own arrogance. Their scans of Earth showed exactly what they expected to see: a primitive world with predictable technology. They didn't scan deep enough to find the hidden facilities. They didn't look for power sources that their sensors said were impossible. Most importantly, they didn't expect humans to understand their technology well enough to hide from it. Walker watched as another test succeeded: a shield generator that could block Council weapons while using only a fraction of the power their theory said was necessary. "How long until we're ready?" 2 more days, Stevens answered. "Maybe 3. The Council is taking their time with negotiations, trying to get every government to agree to their terms. They want this to look legitimate. And if we're not ready when they lose patience..." Stevens looked around the room at the determined faces of soldiers, scientists, and engineers working together. "We'll have to be. Humanity has hidden in plain sight for centuries while they watched us. Now we're going to show them what we can really do." In orbit, the Council ships hung like silent stars, waiting to claim their prize. They had no idea that deep beneath the Earth's surface, humanity was preparing a welcome they would never forget. The breakthrough came at 3:47 a.m. Dr. Anna Thompson was staring at her computer screen when the numbers finally made sense. She knocked over her coffee cup in her rush to reach Admiral Stevens. "We found it." She burst into the command center. "The Council's weakness. It's been right in front of us the whole time." Stevens and Walker gathered around her tablet as she pulled up the data. On the screen, complex wave patterns danced and shifted. Look at their faster-than-light drive systems. She pointed to the patterns. They're based on artificial quantum fields, but human brainwaves. They naturally create interference patterns that disrupt these fields. Walker leaned closer. Are you saying we can stop their ships just by thinking? Not exactly, Anna smiled. But we can build devices that amplify and focus human brainwave patterns. Their ships won't be able to jump to faster-than-light speed near Earth. They'll be trapped here, forced to fight at our speed. Across the facility, other breakthroughs were happening. In the weapons lab, researchers had discovered that Council shield technology had a fatal flaw. It couldn't handle random variations in attack patterns. Their defenses were designed to block specific types of weapons, but humans had created a gun that changed its energy signature with every shot. It's like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape, one scientist explained. Their shields can't adapt fast enough. In another section, the AI team had made their own discovery. They had created a computer system that could predict Council battle strategies with 97% accuracy. It turned out that centuries of being the strongest force in the galaxy had made the Council's military thoroughly predictable. They haven't had to innovate in warfare for thousands of years, the AI specialist explained. They follow the same tactics every time. Our AI can see their moves before they make them. Stevens gathered the facility's leaders for a briefing. The room was tense with excitement and fear. On screens around them, they could see the Council ships still waiting in orbit, their patience wearing thin as Earth's governments delayed signing their integration agreement. We have 3 major advantages, Stevens began. 1. We can prevent their faster-than-light escape. 2. We can penetrate their shields. 3. We can predict their tactics. But we're still outnumbered 50-1. Numbers didn't help Goliath against David, Walker replied. We don't need to defeat their entire fleet. We just need to bloody their nose enough to make them reconsider. The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. Around the world, hidden factories began producing the new weapons and defensive systems. Military pilots practiced with simulators programmed with the AI's predictions. Engineers installed the brainwave amplifiers at strategic points around the planet. In orbit, the Council ships began to show signs of impatience. High Commander Reed's messages became less diplomatic, with hints of threats beneath the polite words. They're scanning the planet more frequently, a sensor operator reported, looking for signs of military preparation, but they can't see our underground facilities, and they're not looking for the kinds of energy signatures our new technology produces. Anna worked with the engineering team to put the finishing touches on their defense system. The beautiful thing is, she explained to Walker, they're so convinced of their superiority that they're not even looking for these innovations. According to their development protocols, we shouldn't be capable of this level of technology for at least another century. Humanity's greatest strength, Walker said, watching the preparations, has always been doing what everyone else thinks is impossible. A warning alarm sounded through the facility. On the main screen, they could see the Council ships changing formation. The time for talking was ending. They're getting ready to force the issue, Stevens announced. All stations, prepare for defense protocol. Let's show them why you should never underestimate human ingenuity. The next few hours would determine the fate of humanity. But for the first time since the Council ships appeared, Earth's defenders felt real hope. They weren't just ready for a fight. They were ready to win. The Council ships moved first. Without warning, their fleet spread out in a perfect geometric pattern above Earth. High Commander Reed's face appeared on screens worldwide. Your time for peaceful integration has ended, he announced. We will now begin mandatory incorporation procedures. Admiral Stevens watched from the command center as 50 massive ships descended into Earth's atmosphere. Right on schedule, he muttered, just like the AI predicted. All units, commence Operation Chaos. Around the world, hidden launchers emerged from mountains, deserts, and oceans, but instead of firing weapons, they activated the brainwave amplifiers. The effect was immediate. Across the Council fleet, faster-than-light drives began to fail. Reed's face showed its first hint of confusion. What is this interference? Impossible. Your civilization cannot possess such technology. The Council ships attempted to retreat to a safe distance, but without their FTL drives, they were trapped in Earth's orbit. That's when humanity launched its real attack. Earth's hidden fleet rose from beneath the oceans and behind the moon. Their ships were smaller than the Council vessels, but they carried the new weapons that changed frequency with every shot. The Council's perfect formation broke apart as their shields failed against the unpredictable energy patterns. Their ships are turning to engage, Walker reported from his battle station. Standard attack pattern Delta, just like we practiced. The human fleet scattered in seemingly random directions. To the Council, it looked like panic, but each movement was carefully calculated by the AI to exploit the aliens' rigid tactical responses. They're dividing their forces, Anna observed from her station. Exactly as predicted. They always split into groups of 3 when confronted with scattered opposition. The trap was sprung. As the Council ships separated, each group found itself caught in a crossfire. Human vessels fired their chaotic pattern weapons from multiple angles, overwhelming the alien shields that couldn't adapt fast enough to the constantly changing energy signatures. High Commander Reed's voice crackled over the command channel, showing the first signs of stress. This is impossible. Your species cannot have developed these technologies. You are violating all known development protocols. That's humanity's specialty, Stevens replied calmly. We don't follow your protocols. We make our own. The battle raged for hours. Council ships, despite their superior size and power, found themselves unable to cope with human battle tactics. Every time they formed up for a standard attack pattern, the human fleet would do something unexpected, something that wasn't in any of their combat manuals. Sir, a sensor operator called out. 3 Council ships are trying to power up their FTL drives despite the interference. The attempt proved disastrous for the alien vessels. The conflicts between their drive fields and the human brainwave patterns caused their engines to overload. The massive ships drifted powerless in orbit. Walker watched as more Council ships began to falter. They don't know how to adapt. They keep trying the same tactics, expecting different results. Finally, after what seemed like endless combat, High Commander Reed's ship took a direct hit to its main power core. The mighty vessel's lights flickered and died. Attention Council forces, Stevens broadcast on all channels. Your command ship is disabled. Your FTL drives are offline. You are trapped in our solar system. We suggest you consider your next moves very carefully. The remaining Council ships froze in position. For the first time in their 1,000-year history, they faced a species that had broken all their rules and won. This is not possible. Reed's final transmission came through. You were supposed to be primitive, controllable. How did you do this? By being human, Stevens replied. We don't follow the expected path. We make our own way. And now, Commander, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation about Earth's future. As the Council ships powered down their weapons, cheers erupted throughout the human fleet. Earth had not just survived. It had shown the galaxy that humanity would never be controlled or suppressed again. While Earth celebrated its victory, Dr. Anna Thompson made a discovery that would change everything. In the captured Council command ships database, she found encrypted files that even the Council's leaders rarely accessed. What she read made her hands shake. Captain Walker, she called over the comm. You need to see this. Now. Within an hour, Walker, Stevens, and key military leaders gathered in the ship's vast data center. The room hummed with alien technology, screens displaying information in the Council's angular script. Look at this. Anna pointed to a particular file. It's about humanity's true origins. We weren't just another primitive species they found. We're something else entirely. She pulled up ancient star charts and genetic records. According to these files, there was once another civilization that challenged the Council's power. They were called the predecessors. They believed in freedom of development, in letting each species grow naturally without interference. What happened to them? Walker asked, studying the charts. The Council claims they vanished mysteriously about 50,000 years ago. But that's not the whole truth. Anna's fingers flew over the alien keyboard, bringing up more records. They didn't vanish. They hid, and we're their descendants. The room fell silent. On the main screen, a DNA comparison showed unmistakable similarities between human genetic patterns and fragments of preserved predecessor DNA. The predecessors knew they couldn't win a direct war against the Council, Anna explained, so they played a longer game. They found a promising primitive species, our ancestors, and merged their own DNA with them. Then they went into hiding, knowing that someday their capabilities would resurface in their descendants. Stevens leaned forward, studying the data. That's why the Council was so interested in controlling us. They sensed something familiar in our development patterns. Exactly, Anna nodded. The predecessors' greatest strengths were their creativity and adaptability, the same traits that define humanity. Our ability to think outside normal patterns, to jump developmental stages, to innovate in ways the Council considers impossible. It's all part of our inheritance. Walker paced the room, thinking. But why didn't the predecessors just fight back? Why go through such an elaborate plan? Anna pulled up another file. Because they understood something the Council never did. True strength doesn't come from following a rigid path of development. It comes from natural growth, from learning to overcome challenges on your own. They didn't just want to defeat the Council. They wanted to prove their whole philosophy was wrong. And we just did exactly that, Stevens said quietly. We beat them by developing in ways their systems said were impossible. A message interrupted their discussion. High Commander Reed was requesting a meeting. In the hours since the battle, the Council fleet had remained motionless in Earth's orbit, their FTL drives still disabled by human technology. Should we tell them what we've discovered? Walker asked. Not yet, Stevens decided. First, let's see what they have to say. Knowledge is power, especially now. As they prepared for the meeting, Anna made one final discovery in the ancient files. There's more, she said, her voice filled with wonder. We're not the only ones. The predecessors seeded their DNA into other promising species across the galaxy. There could be dozens of civilizations out there, all with the same potential, all held back by Council control. Walker smiled. Then I guess after we finish here, we have more work to do. The predecessors started this fight for freedom. It's up to us to finish it. On the main screen, they could see Council ships still floating powerless above Earth. For millennia, they had suppressed species across the galaxy, never realizing they had helped create their own worst nightmare, a humanity that combined primitive determination with their ancient enemy's gift for innovation. Ready for the meeting? Stevens asked the group. Ready, Anna replied, closing the files. Let's show them that humanity isn't just another species to be controlled. We're the ones they've been afraid of all along. 6 months after Earth's victory over the Council fleet, the galaxy had changed forever. The Grand Council Chamber, once a place of rigid order and control, now hosted a very different kind of meeting. Captain Walker stood before representatives from 100 worlds, his voice carrying across the vast hall. We found 3 more worlds showing signs of predecessor DNA, he announced. Like Earth, they'd been artificially held back by Council protocols. We propose immediate cessation of all suppression activities on these worlds. High Commander Reed, now serving as a liaison between the old Council and the new Earth-led coalition, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The past months had been a harsh education in human unpredictability. Each species must develop at the proper pace, he argued, but with less conviction than before. The protocols exist for a reason. The protocols exist for control, Dr. Anna Thompson countered. She stood at a display showing genetic data from dozens of worlds. We've proven that natural development, even if chaotic, produces stronger civilizations. Earth advanced more in the past 6 months than it did in the previous 50 years under Council suppression. The evidence was undeniable. Since breaking free from Council control, Earth had revolutionized space travel, energy production, and medical science. But more importantly, they had begun freeing other worlds from the Council's rigid development protocols. Admiral Stevens, watching from Earth via holographic projection, smiled as he saw former Council hardliners nodding in agreement with Anna's words. The galaxy was learning that progress couldn't be contained in neat, predictable patterns. The predecessors knew this, Anna continued. That's why they didn't just fight the Council. They seeded the galaxy with the potential for creative, adaptive thinking. They trusted that eventually one of their descendant species would break free and prove that their way was right. Around the chamber, representatives from newly liberated worlds shared their own stories. One species had developed space flight centuries ahead of the Council's schedule once the restrictions were lifted. Another had solved their world's energy crisis in weeks using methods the Council had labeled impossible. "We're not here to destroy the Council," Walker assured the Assembly. "We're here to transform it, to make it a true alliance of free species, each developing in their own unique way. Sharing knowledge, yes, but never forcing one path of progress over another." The changes were already spreading across the galaxy. Earth's victory had inspired other worlds to question the Council's authority. The rigid protocols that had governed technological development for millennia were being rewritten. Anna's team had established research centers on a dozen worlds, studying the different ways predecessor DNA had influenced various species. Each one showed the same patterns of creative thinking and adaptive problem-solving that had helped humanity break free. "Our next proposal," Walker announced, "is to establish the Freedom of Development Act. Any civilization that achieves spaceflight, regardless of their development path, will be welcomed as equals in the galaxy. No more suppression. No more control." Reed stood slowly. The chamber fell silent, waiting for the Council's response. "We have learned," he said carefully, "that perhaps our perfect order was not so perfect. The human way, chaotic as it seems, has shown us that there are many paths to advancement. The Council," he paused, looking around the chamber, "accepts your proposal." Cheers erupted from the assembled representatives. Centuries of rigid control were ending. A new age of free development and innovation was beginning. Later, on the observation deck of the Earth ship Defiance, Walker and Anna watched the sun rise over the Council's capital world. "Think we've lived up to what the predecessors hoped for?" Walker asked. Anna smiled, looking at a display showing hundreds of worlds now free to develop at their own pace. "I think we did better. They wanted to prove the Council wrong. We've done that, but we've also shown them a better way. Now the whole galaxy can move forward together." Below them, the capital city sparkled with light, its perfect geometric patterns now beautifully interrupted by sections rebuilt in the creative, unpredictable style of Earth architecture. It was a fitting symbol for the new galaxy, order and chaos working together, creating something greater than either could achieve alone. The age of suppression was over. The age of freedom had begun.